I want to start with a feeling today that I think it's becoming universally familiar, but we rarely actually talk about it out loud. You know that moment when you're staring at a blank page, just struggling to form a coherent thought?
Mm.
You have the fragments, but the structure just isn't there.
Oh, absolutely. The blank page paralysis.
Right, so you open up ChatGPT or Claude or, whatever your flavor of the month is.
Yeah.
You dump your messy, chaotic brain into the prompt box, and you hit enter.
And then what? 3 seconds later, you have an absolute masterpiece.
Exactly. It's structured, it's polite, the grammar is impeccable, and it just flows like water. But, and here is really where I want to start today. Have you ever read that output and felt that it was just weird? Like it's technically perfect, but
Yeah.
it feels like it was written by a committee of very polite robots.
Or worse, I think, it's so incredibly smooth that you find yourself agreeing with it, even if it's not quite what you actually meant to say.
That's the one. It's that uncanny valley of text. It's just too polished. It's almost like marble, cold and hard. So today, we are doing a deep dive into why that exact feeling matters. We're looking at a really fascinating piece of writing. It's a reflective essay by Tommy Yoshida called Standing in the Middle of a Transitional Phase.
And I'm really glad we're tackling this specific source today because Yoshida isn't, well, he's not your typical tech commentator. He's not a VC trying to hype up the next big startup, and he's certainly not a Luddite out there smashing the looms.
Right, I looked into his background a bit before we started. He's really been in the trenches, hasn't he? Working in Web3, blockchain, digital transformation.
He has. He spent years watching how these really complex, messy emerging systems actually get adopted by real people in the real world.
hmm
He knows exactly how the sausage is made, so to speak. And what's interesting is this piece isn't a technical review of AI capabilities at all.
No, it's not about what the tech can do.
Exactly. It reads much more like a philosophical field guide for just living through this weird moment in history. He's shifted his focus from the technology itself to how it is actually experienced in our everyday lives right now.
Yeah, that phrase in the title, transitional phase,
Mm-hmm.
I really got stuck on that. It implies that where we are right now, this exact moment where AI is suddenly everywhere but we don't quite know the social rules yet, is temporary.
It is temporary, but it's also highly unstable. Yoshida argues that we are in this period where the technology has leaped forward massively, but our human habits, our institutions, our social norms, and even our cognitive defenses, they just haven't caught up yet.
We're exposed.
We are. And his main argument, really the mission of his essay, is to point out that in this specific window of time, clarity is often an illusion.
Which is a bold claim.
It's a very heavy opener. Clarity is often an illusion. Because usually when I use these generative tools, clarity is the exact thing I'm looking for. I mean, I want them to clear up my mess. And they do clear it up. But Yoshida asks, at what cost? He starts the piece by describing his own daily use of the tools. Things like voice notes, summarizing long articles, structuring arguments. And he notes that, 95% of the time, the output is incredibly coherent. It's internally consistent.
But then he hits that weird feeling.
Right. He started noticing these moments where things felt slightly misaligned, not overtly broken, but just off.
Misaligned how? Exactly. Like it was getting facts wrong.
Yeah.
Because we all know about hallucinations by now.
Like, that's the fascinating part. If it was a standard hallucination, if the AI suddenly said the moon is made of green cheese, you'd catch it immediately, right? You'd laugh, you'd hit regenerate and move on.
Sure, it's obvious.
But Yoshida's talking about something much more insidious. He's talking about outputs that are entirely plausible, but not quite true to your original intent.
The dangerous middle ground.
Exactly. It wasn't completely broken. It was just slightly off. Maybe the tone was a bit too aggressive, or the nuance of a really delicate argument was just flattened out. But because the sentence structure was so perfect, because the logic seemed to flow flawlessly, he found himself almost accepting it.
Okay, I think we need to pause here and explain why that happens.
Yeah.
Because to the average user, it just feels like magic. But there is a very real technical reason why AI text feels so uniquely smooth, isn't there?
There is, and understanding it is crucial to Yoshida's whole point. These large language models are, at their very core, prediction engines. They aren't trying to tell you the objective truth. They are trying to predict the most likely next token or word in a sequence.
So they're essentially optimizing for the average.
In a way, yes. They're optimizing for coherence and probability. The most probable sentence is usually the most grammatically standard, the most logically common, the most smooth sentence. But real human thought, real truth, that's often spiky, it's awkward, it pauses, it contradicts itself.
Because thinking is hard.
Right. But the AI model smooths all that out because smoothness simply has a higher probability score than an awkward human truth. The AI never hesitates.
That makes so much sense. So when Yoshida warns that when coherence replaces friction too smoothly, something human may quietly disappear,
hmm
he's not talking about our souls in a
hmm
sci-fi way. He's talking about that spikiness, that friction.
Precisely. He's warning that we might lose the actual texture of thought. The danger isn't necessarily physical. It's not a Terminator scenario. The danger is that we will slowly stop noticing the difference between something that is smooth and something that is true.
It reminds me of, okay, bear with me here. It reminds me of autopilot in a Tesla.
Oh, that's a good comparison. Go on.
What if the car was genuinely bad at driving? You'd be gripping the steering wheel,
Yeah.
paying 100% attention, right?
Yeah.
You wouldn't trust it. But because it's amazing 99% of the time, you relax. You start looking at your phone,
hmm
you trust the smoothness of the ride, and that's exactly when the crash happens.
That is the perfect analogy for this transitional phase. We are lulled into a false sense of security by the sheer competence of the machine. And Yoshida actually digs into the mechanics of how these crashes happen in text. He talks about what he calls natural-looking errors.
What exactly is a natural-looking error?
He noticed this specifically with his voice inputs. He dictates a lot of his notes. Let's say he speaks a complex idea into the app, but he mumbles a word. Or the AI just misinterprets a highly specific nuanced term. The AI doesn't stop and say, hey, didn't catch that.
No, it just guesses and keeps going.
It guesses. But here's the kicker. It doesn't just guess the one word. It builds an entire logical argument around that guess to make it fit seamlessly into the paragraph.
Right.
It actually reinforces the error.
Oh, wow. So if I dictate, say, I'm skeptical about this plan, and the AI hears I'm spectacular about this plan, it's going to rewrite the whole email to make me sound super enthusiastic.
Exactly. And because the AI is so incredibly good at being internally coherent, it will make that enthusiasm sound completely logical based on whatever else you said. It literally constructs a reality where that area makes perfect sense.
That is actually terrifying. Because if I'm just skimming that email really quickly before hitting send, I might not even catch it. Because it reads well. It flows.
And that's the reinforcement of error he's talking about. The system doesn't intend to mislead you at all, but once an assumption enters the chain, the model confidently builds on it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you, the human, don't pause to check it, the smoothness completely hides the mistake.
Which means we are the ones letting the error into the real world.
Right. And Yoshida actually felt this observation was significant enough that he provided formal feedback to OpenAI about it.
Wait, he actually sent feedback? That feels almost, I don't know, feudal. Like writing a letter to Google complaining about search results.
It might seem that way, but the specific content of his feedback is what's telling. He didn't just say, hey, fix your speech-to-text bugs. He focused on accessibility and design responsibility. He pointed out that for people who rely on voice input, maybe due to a disability or just their daily workflow, this smooth error is a major liability.
Oh, I see. It's a huge accessibility issue because the system is prioritizing looking good over being accurate.
Yes. He framed it not as some angry accusation against the tech, but as a necessary observation of a design flaw. The tool is designed to never hesitate and never look confused. But sometimes, as a human, confusion is the correct response.
Okay, so we have this system that is hyper-confident, statistically smooth, and prone to essentially gaslighting us with our own mistakes. Most people would just say, well, be careful. But Yoshida actually developed a protocol for this, didn't he?
He calls it a posture.
A posture. I love that. Not a rigid rule book, but a way of standing.
Exactly. It's about how he physically and mentally positions himself relative to the AI. It isn't about the technology itself. It's about his behavior when interacting with it. He lays out 5 principles to survive this transitional phase without losing human judgment.
Let's walk through these 5 principles because I think this is where the rubber really meets the road for our listeners. What is the very first shift he makes in his posture?
The first principle is consult, don't hand over.
That sounds a bit subtle. What's the actual difference in practice?
Think about how you treat a trusted colleague versus how you treat an intern you don't really know yet. If you ask a colleague for input, you're consulting them. You weigh their opinion, you listen to their ideas, but ultimately, you make the call. When you hand over, you are outsourcing the final result entirely.
So he treats the AI like a highly capable library, not a ghostwriter.
He refuses to let it be the decision maker. He might ask it to summarize a document or to offer a counter-argument to a point he's making, but he never says, write this email for me, and then just leaves the room. He retains the agency.
But that's hard, isn't it? The tool is specifically designed to take the baton. It wants to write the whole thing for you.
Which is exactly why the second principle is so critical. Respect discomfort.
This goes back to that slightly off feeling we talked about earlier.
Yes. Yoshida made a hard rule for himself. If he reads an output and something feels even 1% off, he slows down. He stops. He refuses to ignore small discomforts.
See, I feel like I do the exact opposite of that. If it feels slightly off, I usually just shrug, look at the clock and say, good enough, sent.
And that is the trap. That good enough moment is exactly where the human element quietly dissolves. Yoshida argues that your discomfort, that little intuitive voice in your head saying, is actually your most valuable asset right now. It's your human intuition flagging a misalignment between the smooth text and the messy reality.
So instead of suppressing that itch, he leans into it.
He digs in. He assumes the discomfort is there for a very good reason.
Okay, so we are consulting, and we are aggressively listening to our gut. What's the third principle?
This next one connects back to what we discussed about probability. Coherence does not equal truth.
I feel like we should all have that tattooed on our foreheads.
It really should be the mantra of the AI age. Just because it reads beautifully and sounds incredibly smart doesn't mean it is true. Yoshida explicitly separates smooth structure from lived reality. He reminds himself daily that the map is not the territory.
It's funny, we used to have this exact problem with slick politicians or overly aggressive salespeople. We inherently knew not to trust them because they were too smooth. But with a computer interface, we just blindly assume the smoothness equals competence.
We assume it equals pure objectivity. And Yoshida's saying, no, it's just a mathematical optimization of language. You need to treat it exactly like that slick salesperson.
Okay, I want to spend a minute on the fourth principle. Because when I read the source material for this deep dive, this one really stuck with me. Delaying conclusion.
This is definitely my favorite one as well.
It just seems so counterintuitive. The entire selling point of generative AI is speed. Give me the answer right now. Why on earth would he want to actively delay the conclusion?
Because of a powerful psychological concept called anchoring.
Break that down for us.
Imagine you have to write a really difficult performance review for an employee. You have some vague, messy thoughts about their performance. If you ask the AI to draft it first, and you read that output immediately becomes your anchor. Your brain instantly latches onto that specific structure, those specific words, and that tone.
And once you see it, you can't unsee it.
You can't unthink it. Even if you go in and edit it, you are now just editing within the box that the AI created for you. You have essentially seeded the creative and analytical territory before you even started thinking yourself.
So Yoshida's rule is what? He generates the text but just refuses to look at it.
Sometimes, yes. Or he forces himself to write his own messy bullet point draft before he even opens the AI tool. He intentionally chooses not to read the full output immediately to let his own thinking reveal itself first. He delays the gratification of the smooth answer so his own brain actually has to do the heavy lifting.
That is immense. It's literally protecting your own cognitive process. It's like forcing yourself to do the math on a piece of paper before checking the calculator, just to make absolutely sure you still know how to multiply.
It's cognitive resistance training.
And that leads perfectly into the fifth and final principle. If delaying conclusion is about slowing down in the micro moment, the last one is about zooming out completely.
Principle 5 is intentional distance,
The classic digital detox.
but specifically targeted at AI. He takes full days off from using it. He has this great quote in the essay, "Convenience shortens distance, and distance is required for perspective."
Wow, convenience shortens distance. That's a profound line.
If you are always in the loop, always seamlessly using the tool for every little task, you completely lose the ability to see what the tool is actually doing to your thought process. You just become a node in the system. By stepping away, by intentionally doing things the hard manual way for a few days, you reset your baseline.
You remind yourself what it actually feels like to struggle with a sentence.
And you remember that the struggle itself is actually where the thinking happens.
You know, looking at these 5 principles together, consult, respect discomfort, coherence isn't truth, delaying conclusion, and intentional distance, they all share one very glaring common theme. They are all wildly inefficient.
They really are. They're absolutely terrible for workplace productivity.
Right. If your boss saw you doing this, waiting to read the output, drafting things manually, taking days off the tools, they'd probably say you're wasting company time.
But Yoshida would argue strongly that efficiency simply isn't the only metric that matters. In fact, If we optimize purely for efficiency in this phase, we optimize ourselves right out of the loop. He's intentionally introducing friction back into the system.
Friction as a feature, not a bug.
Exactly. That friction, the pause, the doubt, the time taken to actually verify a fact, that is the very humanity he's trying to protect.
Which brings us to the real philosophical core of this deep dive. Yoshida isn't observing all this just to prove AI is incapable. He's pro-responsibility.
That is the exact word, responsibility. He is observing to clarify where human responsibility must remain. He writes that responsibility defines what it means to remain human.
That's a bit abstract, though. What does that actually look like when I'm just sitting at my desk trying to send a status update?
It means fully owning the error. If the AI writes a coherent lie and you hit send without checking, you lied. You cannot blame the model. The model is just a token predictor. You are the moral agent in that transaction.
But it's so tempting to just blame the glitch. Oh, sorry, the AI messed that up. You know how it is.
And as the models get even smoother and more capable, that excuse just gets easier and easier to use. Yoshida is saying we have to actively fight that temptation. We have to guard our responsibility jealously. We shouldn't want to give it away to a server farm.
He has this phrase in the text about the danger, something about responsibility dissolving.
Yes. Human responsibility must not quietly dissolve under the comfort of optimization.
That hits hard.
Yeah.
It's basically the boiling frog metaphor. But the water is just a really nice, warm, comfortable bath. We don't notice we're losing our agency and our critical thinking because it just feels so good to have everything done for us instantly.
We are quite literally being killed with kindness, or rather, with convenience.
So Yoshida really views himself as standing right in the middle, between rapid advancement and everyday life, between coherence and friction, between the system output and human responsibility. He's not rejecting the future, but he's absolutely refusing to let go of the past habits that made him a critical thinker.
He's trying to inhabit two very different worlds at once. The world of high-speed machine coherence and the world of slow, messy human judgment. And he admits, quite humbly, that this posture isn't permanent. It has to remain fluid.
Because it's a transitional phase.
Exactly. But for right now, in this moment, his strategy is to keep one foot firmly planted on the brake pedal, even while the engine is revving to go faster.
It's a really refreshing take. Usually the only advice we hear is adopt AI quickly or get left behind. Yoshida's saying, adopt AI, but don't leave yourself behind in the process.
And that requires effort. It requires the active, conscious choice to be inefficient sometimes, to verify, to tolerate the ambiguity, to think.
So for everyone listening who feels that constant pressure to just let the AI handle it and move on to the next task, maybe take a page out of Yoshida's diary.
Ask yourself, when was the last time you genuinely struggled with an idea?
If the answer is I can't remember, maybe it's time to invoke some intentional distance.
Turn the tool off. Write a terrible first draft. Be incoherent for a little while.
Be human.
Be human.
I think that's the perfect place to wrap up the analysis. We've covered the technical why behind the smoothness, the very real risks of the smooth lie, and Yoshida's 5-step protocol for keeping your brain engaged in the age of automation.
It's certainly a lot to digest.
It is, but I want to leave you, the listener, with one final, slightly uncomfortable thought to chew on or explore on your own. We've talked a lot today about how the AI optimizes for smoothness and how we actually need friction to think.
Here comes a challenge.
Here it is. Are you willing to intentionally make your own life less convenient, to willingly slow down, to struggle, to sit with doubt, just to ensure that you are still the one doing the thinking? Or is the comfort of the smooth answer just too good to resist?
That really is the defining question of our time.
Let us know what you think. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Keep thinking.
See you next time.